Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Rise of Kingdoms gameplay from your very own Shappy Gaming. If you missed our previous video, be sure to click on the top right of your screen. You can see our last Osiris League match. I thought that it was a great match. You'll have to check it out to see how it actually went. Today, we are going to be talking about prepping for battle. And as you can see, if I zoom out here, our Pass 7 is going to be opening within the next couple of days, and we are getting ready for it. And so for anyone who has been staying up to date on the 2120 KVK, it's time. And just to give you guys a refresher on who we are up against, so once again, it is 2120, my kingdom, on the top left, and 2155, our allies, on the bottom right, against 1486 and 1484, the two Imperiums. And those you can see on the image in front of you. So today we are going to be talking about what you should be doing to prepare for battle. A lot of people have been playing Rise of Kingdoms for a long time. Some of you are old players, some of you are new players. And my hope is that no matter who you are, you learn something from this video. So, with that said, let's get into it. And the first thing we are going to be covering are buffs. So, there are three main different kinds of buffs that you can be getting in KVK. And the first ones that you're going to be popping are from your boosts. And so, as you can see here, there are attack boosts and there are defense boosts. Depending upon how you play, these boosts are going to be beneficial to you in different ways. So, the first kind of boost you want to be popping is attack. The reason that you want to pop an attack buff would be if you're a rally leader and you have a nuking rally march that you don't expect to get swarmed. Because you want to be putting out more damage, so your defense is less important because you're really only getting the counterattack damage from the structure you're targeting. However, if you're planning on getting swarmed or expecting to get swarmed, you want to be popping a defense buff. And I will point out here, there are different time limits and different levels of the buffs. The one you're going to want to be popping, if you can, is the 10% buff, because that extra 5% is going to be huge in terms of the long run and the amount of time that you're in battle. And so you'll notice here there are 5% for attack, 5% for defense, and 10% for attack, and 10% for defense. But Chappy, I don't have these buffs. Where do I get them? So the place you're going to get the buffs is you're actually going to go into your VIP store, and you're going to scroll down, and you will find there's your 24-hour enhanced attack for 600 gems. And let's find our defense. It should be here as well for, there we go, 10% defense for 750. I would recommend if you're going to be a garrison commander, you want to be using defense, and you want to be using defense predominantly because if you're garrisoning and in Xeno YSS, it's going to be infantry. But if you are a field player and you're joining structures, you're probably going to want attack. And we'll be talking about that later. The other type of buffs that you can have are troop expansions. So one of the things that people tend to get hung up on is, I don't have enough troops, I can field 5 marches, but they're not very good. What you typically want to do, and this is my recommendation, let's say you have 1 or 2 or 3 really strong marches. You're going to want to pop an army expansion and try and funnel all of your troops into those main marches with strong commanders. You're much better off having 3 really strong marches than 5 kind of meh marches. And the reason for that is if you have 5 marches that aren't very good, the odds that you're going to get swarmed by a mega whale and your hospital is going to get full and you're going to be completely out of the battle quicker is much higher than if you're running, let's say, an Attila Takeda, which is my march of choice, with tons of troops in it and higher tech. And we'll be talking about tech in a little bit because that's part of how you prepare for war. Once again, there are 2 different types of army expansions. There's a 25% and there's a 50%. When you're going into war at the pass, you want that 50%. Not only is this going to make it so you can put more troops in a structure, but it's also going to make it so that if you do come into contact with an enemy that has higher tech than you, if you have more troops than them on the field, you'll actually trade better. And this also applies when you're attacking a march that is smaller. So let's say there's a wounded march of 100k troops. If you have 350k, you're going to deal more damage to that march and take less damage with your 310k march instead of if you only have a standard march of 200k. And so you're going to want to be popping your expansions and your attack or defense buff, depending upon who you are. Those are going to be your personal buffs that you're going to want to use. You're also going to want to come into your city hall and make sure you're using a skin that's going to be beneficial for your playstyle. So I have Gilgamesh and Nebu. I finally maxed them. So one of the things I'm going to want to make sure I'm using is a city skin that's going to favor that. So my archer health skin is going to help buff my rally because it's going to give me an extra 5% archer health. There are other skins that you might want to use if you're a whale. The Twilight Fall skin is great if you're going to run 5 marches, especially if you're running archer and infantry primary. For me, that's something I'm looking at for down the road. But most likely, I'm going to be running archer health. And if I'm garrisoning with my Xeno, then I'm going to probably hot swap my city skin to my gingerbread house. I will point out, you typically want to favor health over attack or defense. That's just kind of a word to the wise because it seems that health is more impactful. So, let's talk about alliance buffs. So if you come into your technology, you'll notice that there are 6 different alliance buffs that can be popped. Fully Loaded, Nature's Gift, Unbridled Progress, Skillful Craftsman, Books and Battles, Counteroffensive. We're not going to be talking about the Gathering buffs. They don't matter for this. However, we will be talking about these 4 buffs here. Unbridled Progress, March Speed, and Damage dealt to Barbarians. So this buff is useful when you are trying to run to a fort, or really when you're trying to run to anything. You want to be popping this skill before you launch a rally on the pass because my understanding, and feel free to correct me in the comment section below, is that the march that hits the pass first is the one that's going to be taking the pass. So you tend to want to use this march speed buff then. Typically, you'll follow that with the Alliance flag construction speed buff because you want to be building those flags really quickly after you take the pass. But do not pop this buff until you have troops next to the flag that you want to build. And the reason I say that is you only get an hour with this buff, but if you have troops already next to the flag, then you can start filling the flag immediately and taking advantage of that buff, and you don't have to wait the 5 to 6 minutes for the flag to get filled. The next one of the most important buffs that you can have is the Books and Battles buff. And it's super simple. It's 10% attack. If you're stacking that with your other 10% attack personal buff that you've already popped, this is going to be really huge, especially if you're running nuking 5 march, 7 marches. This is going to be really valuable because you can swarm targets on the field super quickly, and if you are a rally lead, this will help you out. The next one, counteroffensive. So this will help with your defense, but it also helps with short-term shielding. So this buff can be used a couple ways. Not only will it help you if you're garrisoning structures and you guys are playing defense and trying to hold the field, but this will also help you if you find that you have a whole bunch of members that were not on the correct territory and you lost the pass and suddenly all those people are getting rallied. This will give you 360 seconds to try and get those people online and onto the right territory or bubbled. So all super valuable buffs that you're going to want to keep in mind. The last buff that we're going to talk about that is just kind of a buff that can be popped is the King buff. And so if we go back to 2120 and take a look at our temple, give me just a second. 600. I should be able to see the King buff for you. Please hold. Shappy loading. Let's go here. So here you go. Here's the King skill. And if you're the King, you may want to give your King to a farm so you can pop it because the King skill does cost gems. But this is another buff that you're going to want to be actively using in combat. And so what this allows you to do is choose a troop in your kingdom to act as a leader troop. Typically, you want to use a march that's not going to be targeted. So if you're the King and you're popping a buff, you're probably going to want to choose like I don't know, a Richard or a march that's more tanky that's going to last for longer. And what this skill does is when it's active, the leader troop will grant a 3% bonus to all damage dealt by all nearby troops for the same kingdom for 10 minutes. So this is huge. When you're fighting for flags or when you're fighting at the pass, you want to have this skill because it's going to help you hold the field, it's going to help you deal more damage, and that 3% bonus to all damage dealt is massive. I will point out here, though, there is a cooldown of 5 minutes, and so you want to be very careful that you're not trying to pop this buff too many times because you may get stuck in a position where you were planning on rallying something and then your buff ran out and there's a 5-minute cooldown and you can't buff the rally that you're sending out. Typically you want to use this leader skill because you want to enhance those rallies as they go out. Please note, it will not enhance troops in a garrison. So we've talked about those kinds of buff, but what other ones matter? So let's come into the technology. And the reason we're coming into technology is we're going to talk about alliance territory and all of the different reasons why you want to be sure you're fighting on it. So when you're fighting on alliance territory, you will get, if you're in a max tech alliance, you will get attack buffs, you will get more attack buffs, you'll get march speed buffs, and looks like it's predominantly just attack buffs, which is still relevant. I lied. You also get troop attack buffs for cavalry. You get defense buffs. Long story short, one of the things that you absolutely want to be doing when you are in war is fighting on your own territory. Because as you just saw there are a collection of buffs that you will get when you fight on your own territory. And so this can make the difference when fighting against someone with max tech or max KVK crystal tech, because those on territory alliance buffs, if your KVK tech is decent, can totally turn the tide in a battle, especially if you're popping the other buffs that we've mentioned and that you have the troop expansion on. So one of the things, if you take anything from this video, fight on alliance territory. And if an enemy isn't on alliance territory, then what you can do is you can bring them on alliance territory. So typically you'll see battles right along the line right here. And so what you want to do is attack someone, wait till they target you, pull them in, and then, hide inside a structure or something like that. And that way your allies can swarm that target, get the alliance territory buff, and it'll help you trade better and win the battles easier. This is especially important when playing defense. The other thing we're going to talk about is holy sites. So, you may have 5 different alliances that all have max alliance tech. That's great. But there are holy sites that will make one alliance better for fighting than others. So if you look here, the Circle of Nature is a coalition buff, and we'll be talking about that in a sec. But first, let's talk about the different alliance buffs. So if we look, this holy site for these alliance will give me healing speed buff, troop attack, rallied army attack, troop defense, and troop attack as well. And so because this particular alliance has all of these different holy sites, we're going to want to be sure that we're in this alliance when we're launching rallies, when we're attacking people, because the better alliances with the holy sites are going to be better to be fighting from in KVK, because the odds are fairly high that the alliances you're going to be fighting against all have these same structures. And so you may be at a disadvantage if you're not in one of these alliances when you're trying to launch rallies. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now you watched me gloss over the coalition buffs. So this is really important. Coalition buffs are shared, and they come predominantly from, well, really completely from the holy sites in the KVK, in the Lost Kingdom. So as you can see here, this coalition is touching a Circle of Nature, which is going to give you counterattack damage taken reduction, really big for rallies and garrison, all damage plus 3%, healing speed, and some gathering speed buffs. Gathering, a little bit less important right now. But all of these circle buffs are really going to be helpful when fighting enemies or garrisoning. And so this coalition that you're looking at right now is really in a strong position to fight in KVK and do the rallies. And so if you're building out your position in a zone 6 and you're like, okay, which alliance should go where? You want to be sure that you're keeping in mind the different coalitions, and if you're adding or dropping alliances from the coalitions, that you're fighting from the coalitions that have these buff, because if you're not, you're going to be at a slight disadvantage. So, we've talked about the buffs that you can pop. We've talked about the alliance territory buffs. Let's talk about your commanders. So one of the things that you're going to want to be doing before you go into combat is you're going to want to make sure that all of your commanders are set up. And that means that you're checking your equipment. So you're making sure that, hey, I'm going to be rallying with Gilgamesh. I want to make sure that my Gilgamesh has all the right equipment that he's supposed to have, and that it's not stuck on El Cid because I was playing Osiris League. So the first thing you're going to do is check all of your equipment. And there's also this neat little question mark you can click out here to check what your different perks are of your different equipments. And this will give you a really good view of how balanced your commanders are. And if I were you, one of the things you'd want to do is say, hey, I seem to have a lot of archer defense. What is the archer base defense? And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to come into our city. And we'll wait for it to load up. And then we're going to go here. And you can actually see what the base stats of your commanders are. And so, as you saw, I have a lot of archer defense. Well, it looks like my archers are just, natively lacking in defense. So that's actually really good because I've balanced out my commander's weaknesses to make sure that, I'm in a good spot. And as we mentioned earlier, if this is a rally commander that I'm expecting to get swarmed, defense is going to be better because there are going to be more targets attacking me. So you're going to want to check your equipment, make sure everything's on the right commanders, and if you can, you may be able to refine particular equipments, which you're going to want to do because if you can crit an equipment, it's going to give you more advantage on the field. Additionally, you're going to want to be checking your talents. So I have not talked about talents much on this channel beyond the gathering trees, but you're going to want to be checking your talents. And the reason is that there are different talent setups for different ways that you're going to play. So for example, I have a field setup for my Gilgamesh, and I have a rally setup for my Gilgamesh. I may want to modify this to have some of the conquering tree. And so you're going to want to make sure that your setups are perfect for what you're going to be doing. And so if you're going to be field fighting, set your commanders for field fighting. If you're going to be doing support, you may want to make sure that your Joan is in a support configuration instead of a gathering configuration. And so it really depends based upon how you're going to be playing. So just keep that in mind. Additionally here, we are going to be talking about skills. So if your commanders aren't maxed, you're going to want to make sure that your skills are all set up appropriately. And if they're not, you may want to make sure that if you're running a commander in the field that doesn't have the right skill setup, that you change it in advance. And what you can actually do is you can reset the skills and try your luck. So if I were to click reset here, I have 7 skill resets that I can use. And that can make sure that I can get my cow to make sure it has the 10% increased march speed or the 30% increased attack. And if I wanted to try my luck, I'd reset my cow now and see if I could get this 3rd skill up to where it should be and see if we can sacrifice some of that bonus damage to barbarians, which is not going to help me in the field. So we've talked about skills, we've talked about talents, we've talked about your equipment. So the last thing I will talk about is training for your playstyle and checking your commander tab. So you want to be sure that you have enough troops for how you're going to play. If you are not an archer main, then you probably want to make sure you have enough cavalry and infantry to keep you going in the field. These hospitals are enormous in KVK. You can have 720k severely wounded troops. That does go quickly, but you want to make sure that you can field your same infantry march or your same cavalry march multiple times without having to get stuck reinforcing or, even worse, clearing out your hospital every time you want to try and field your march, because that is no bueno and not what you want to be doing. Additionally, let's talk about the commander tab. So this often gets overlooked. I've forgotten about it. Rally leaders have forgotten about it. It's something you don't want to forget about. And the reason is that you want to make sure that the commanders you're planning on using in the field or in your rally are on your commander tab. The reason is, if you don't have enough troops, you're going to run into a lot of trouble. And so 1% attack, 1% health, rallied attack speed, troop defense, troop health. All of these things do matter. Even if you think that they might not, the smallest things can make the largest impacts when fighting in KVK. And even some alliance tech can make a difference in the slightest. And when you're in KVK, you're actually fighting for small buffs like 1%, 1.5%, which can be covered by the Commander tab if you've remembered to actually change it. So we've talked about everything you should be doing to prep. Let's talk about how you should actually be fighting. So I mentioned that you want to be fighting on territory. Absolutely, 100%. Fight on your own territory if you can. However, you also want to be sure that you're attacking targets that are support marches or squishy marches. And what these are typically nukers, or you'll see a Constantine in the field, or a Joan, or an Ethelfled. You want to be taking those out because A, they're going to be weaker, and B, they can be really impactful when you're fighting in a multi-march field situation. And you certainly don't want your enemies to be buffing their rallies against your structures. Also, be sure that you're attacking marches that your troops are strongest against. So, as you all know, there is a 5% troop buff, at least, your talents augment this, but there's a 5% troop buff for simply attacking a troop that your march would be strong against. So if you're cavalry, you're going to want to attack archers. If you're archers, you're going to attack infantry. And if you're infantry, you're going to want to attack cavalry. And this goes across the board. And so this is just something to keep in mind. If I'm marching around with 5 archer marches, hey, good for me. I'm going to want to be swarming those infantry marches. If I see a Guan, I'm melting it. If I see, a Richard, I'm melting it. But you also want to keep in mind that those support marches like Trajans can become real problems if you don't kill them all. And so you're going to want to swarm those. And swarming is attacking a target with multiple marches at once. So we mentioned earlier that you may not have all 5 marches. That's okay. But when you do swarm a target and you attack it with as many marches as you possibly can, not only does it kill it faster, but it can't actually directly attack you. And so you're going to deal far more damage when swarming a commander or a single march than if you just tried to 1v1 it. And so you want to be sure that you're swarming marches when you attack, not just trying to 1v1 the different targets. And it can get really complicated if you're trying to, drag your Attila to attack an archer march and then drag your Guan to attack a cavalry march. It's just far too complicated. And at the end of the day, you're going to trade more positively if you're swarming. Additionally, you want to be sure that you're counter-rallying when enemies are rallying your structures. But Chappie, it says 5 minutes. No. Rallies in KVK are rarely 5 minutes. So when you see that an enemy is rallying a structure, what you want to do is you want to scout the person who is rallying the structure. And the reason you will do this is because you can actually see which commanders they are launching the rally with. So if you see a Pakal Herald, you know that you need to get your Gilgamesh ready to counter-rally that rally. So you know what they're rallying against, you watch their city, and as soon as they leave their city, you want to counter-rally them. And you counter-rally them because it takes them time to get to your structure, and as soon as you're counter-rallying them, your garrison is going to feel much stronger because they're losing health from 2 enemies now, and they're getting swarmed. So be sure that you're counter-rallying quick and often. Additionally, let's talk about garrisons. So you want to be sure that you're garrisoning with the right troops. So the meta troops, let's talk about, Xeno YSS. Predominantly an infantry garrison. You want to have a little bit of mixed in there so you get that YSS skill, but you want it to predominantly be infantry. Jadwiga YSS. Predominantly cavalry, a little bit of mixed. Amanitore Artemisia, though, you want all archers. Don't put mixed, you're going to mess up your skills. And so be sure that you can see within the structure what the different garrison leads are asking for. There's no one in here right now, so I can't show you. But you can actually mark what you're looking for. See, this rally is for cavalry. Be sure you're checking that and you're sending the right types of troops to the garrisons and to the rallies. If you send the wrong type of troops, you're going to mess everything up, and you'll make it so your kingdom and alliance or coalition will lose far more troops than they actually need to lose. Additionally, you want to be sure that you have your strongest garrisons in the structures. So I have Xeno Theo. That's a fairly good garrison. But if someone has a Xeno YSS and the same KVK tech as I do, we're going to want the Xeno YSS in there. That's okay. I can put my infantry march in there, but the advantage is that I'm going to be trading better by being within their structure than if it were myself. One of the things people forget is that the people in the structure get all of the tech, equipment, and boosts that the garrison commander and rally lead has. So I can be sending in my farm, but if someone with max KVK tech is garrisoning, I could be sending in my farm's T4 and it's no problem because all of those T4 are getting the advantages of the garrison leader's tech and equipment. So it's not about being selfish. You want to be sure that your best garrison leaders are garrisoning and rallying at all times. And the reason is that you want those buffs. You want to be trading better. And the kills apply to everyone. They've made it so it's based upon the number of troops and the troop type that you contribute to the structure. So the garrison leader and the rally leader are really not getting that many more kills these days, which, you know, as a rally and garrison lead, I think sucks. But for everyone else, it's phenomenal. So we've talked a lot about boosts. We've talked a lot about marches. Let's talk a little bit about, how else you should be in the field. I mentioned if you have 3 strong marches, field them. Absolutely. But if you have a 4th march that's an Ethel-Legion, and you can avoid it getting targeted, you want to be putting that in the field. And the reason is that Ethelfled is going to be debuffing your enemies while buffing your troops. And this can be really valuable because it's buffing your troops and your allies. And so you want to be sure that if you can field a support march, whether that's Trajan or Mulan or Joan, that you do it. And the reason is that you want to be keeping everyone buffed at all times. And the more support commanders in the field, often the better. But as I said earlier, those commanders may get targeted. And so that brings me to my next point, which is how do you run away? So typically yellow or red means run. Red always means run. But as we saw earlier here, the different technologies can really help you out here. So if you read carefully, rapid march works when you're marching to a target that is in alliance territory. So what I typically do is I will mark a flag that is in our territory and I will say target this to run away. And the reason is that you're going to run much faster to an allied flag, and this is in your alliance. I don't believe it applies to coalition. You're going to run much faster to an alliance flag than you will if you just click retreat. So you want to be sure that you are targeting these alliance flags when you're trying to run away. And if you have a city next to you, hop into that city, reinforce the city, hop in, hop out, hop to the flags. The reason is you don't want to be caught in the field because you will die, especially if you have red troops. The last thing that I'm going to touch here is building. So when you're building a flag, not only do you want to use that flag skill that we spoke about earlier, but you want to be sure that you're balling up next to the flag. And the reason is that if an enemy rallies the flag, you have those reinforcements sitting there ready to get into the flag. And if someone attacks that ball and they're using an AoE commander like YSG, they're going to end up in a world of pain because they've now triggered all of the troops in the ball to swarm them. And so balling up makes it harder for enemies to target particular marches, and it makes it much easier for you in the ball to swarm any enemies that are coming for you. Not only that, but if someone is rallying your structure, and let's say you have an Amanitore Artemisia in it, and my archers are sitting in that ball, I can just drag those archers into the ball as soon as the garrison gets low. So you want to be sure you're doing that, both for rallies and garrison. Balling up is advantageous. You want to be doing it, and you want to be sure that you're keeping your ball full constantly because it can really become a bloodbath if you have a half ball and not a full one. Additionally, do not extinguish flags until reinforcements are in them. So when a flag is burning, you have the opportunity as an R4 to extinguish using alliance credits, or as an individual to extinguish using gems. Extinguishing flags is great. However, you don't want to be extinguishing the flags until you are in it. And the reason is that an enemy with a single T1 troop can hit that flag if it's empty, and it'll start burning for another 15 minutes, and you've totally blown your shot at defending it. So you want to be sure that you're only extinguishing once your reinforcements are in the flag. Additionally, be sure that when you're building a flag, you bring your troop back once the flag finishes, because when a flag finishes, all the troops get expelled from it. And what this means is if an enemy's smart, and they have a one troop T1 there, they will try and hit the flag as soon as everyone got expelled from it, because now it has an empty garrison. And that's bought them 15 minutes of burn time, which for flags, which have like an hour of burn time, that's really impactful. So you want to be sure that you're keeping your troops in the structure. If you see it's about to finish, you click reinforce, and then you just wait. And as soon as you see your troops starting to march out, you pull them back in. And lastly, we are going to talk about how to build and the advantages of double rallying. So as you guys know, there's currently a meta of, Garrison. Some might argue that Gilgamesh has changed it. I don't really think so. In order to break that meta, you want to be sure that you are double rallying. And so if we look here, you can see that Soar and Bags are both positioned here. Granted, we're in the same coalition right now, but if we were to drop, we would be able to double rally this pass, which is really, really important. Because if we can double rally this pass, then we can send 2 rally marches to the pass at once. And if we're smart, we can even use one as a defensive march, say, Pakal Herald, and one as an offensive march, like Gilgamesh. And if we stagger it, then you can march Pakal Herald first. So he's the first one to hit. So he's the one getting the direct attack and counterattack damage from whoever's garrisoning. But the Gilgamesh Nebu is just dealing tons of damage and only taking counterattack. So you want to be sure that you're building so that you can double rally structures. And again, if you need to drop someone out of coalition to do that, that's okay. But you just have to be prepared, and you want to make sure that you have R5s on to do that. That concludes our exhibition of how to prepare for battles in KVK. I hope that you have enjoyed. If you have, be sure to click that like button. If you haven't already, click subscribe on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. And as always, thank you. Shappy out.